A doctor opens a medical file and studies a brain scan, then quietly asks the man across from him if he is truly okay. The man answers yes without hesitation, but the doctor shakes his head slowly and says, "No, you are not okay at all." The doctor tells him the scan reveals one of the most severe cases of post-traumatic stress he has ever personally documented. He says it is worse than what he typically sees in soldiers who have returned home from active combat overseas. That single exchange becomes the hinge of everything that follows, a story of violence, faith, instinct, and a mind pushed past limits. Yet the conversation begins somewhere stranger, with the notion that humanity itself might be a prize fought over by unseen forces. The talk turns to motive, whether deliberate intention lies behind the chaos so many people sense quietly within the world. He admits he cannot name the motive exactly, only that, whatever drives it is, clearly not benevolent or kind. For his next film, he wants to ask why flawed, fragile humanity matters within a vast struggle between good and evil. He believes unseen spiritual forces are real, and any institution touching the divine will eventually be shaped by that struggle. Sometimes, he says, good quietly loses ground, not always by choice, while deception or self-deception slips unnoticed inside. Every morning he prays simply not to deceive himself, because the human mind, he insists, is strange and slippery. He then describes an old idea that nobody is responsible for their first thought, only for the second one chosen. That distinction, he explains, marks the real legal line separating first-degree murder from second-degree murder entirely. First-degree murder involves a single thought that is carefully planned out and then deliberately carried through over time. Second-degree erupts instead in the heat of a sudden unexpected moment, a stabbing born from raw panic. The law carefully weighs that exact difference, separating someone who plotted in advance from someone who simply reacted instinctively. He laughs, admitting everyone has mentally plotted some violence once, only to talk themselves out on second thought. That hesitation, that brief pause of reconsideration, is itself remarkable, marking the difference between genuine reflection and pure raw instinct. This leads him into the heart of his own story, the long damage hidden inside his own brain. He describes years living inside what he calls his animal brain, trapped constantly in fight-or-flight mode. There was no real sleep then, only a hair-trigger temper that almost anyone could accidentally and unknowingly ignite. A single wrong glance from a stranger could provoke in him an overwhelming urge to lash out violently. He admits he said and did things during that state that were simply not acceptable in ordinary, everyday life. Eventually, he sought out specialist Daniel Amen, a doctor widely renowned for treating brain trauma in professional contact sport athletes. Amen remains genuinely skeptical of medication as a default fix, preferring instead to directly examine the organ itself. A radioactive tracer was carefully injected, allowing the brain itself to finally be imaged in full clinical detail. This produced the defining scene, Amen opening the file, studying the scan, and looking up with visible concern. He asked again if his patient was okay, and again the answer came back as a simple yes. Amen did not believe him this time, and instead rose to sit slowly and carefully right beside him. He told him plainly this was among the most severe post-traumatic stress cases he had personally ever seen. He added it was worse than cases he regularly encountered among soldiers returning home from active combat zones. Hearing it confirmed by imaging, rather than guesswork, broke something open inside him that had stayed sealed for years. He finally began to well up, admitting out loud for the first time that no, he was not okay. The prescribed remedy sounded almost too simple: fish oil supplements paired with a daily vitamin B complex regimen. Alongside that came regular sessions inside a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, scheduled roughly 2 or 3 separate times every week. The full treatment ran for around 40 sessions total, and somehow, against all expectation, it genuinely began to work. It gradually pulled him out of that frantic, hair-trigger state he had been trapped inside for years. The underlying science involves neuroplasticity, the brain's surprising and remarkable capacity to repair and rebuild itself over time. Years of teenage rugby, including multiple concussions and being knocked unconscious on the field, had left lasting damage. The resulting scans looked almost like Swiss cheese, visibly riddled with gaps scattered across the damaged brain tissue. Yet given proper nutrition and consistent oxygen therapy, the brain proved capable of healing even those visible holes. The conversation then widens further toward the broader toll repeated head trauma takes on athletes across many contact sports. Many football players end up genuinely depressed and hormonally imbalanced, no longer producing adequate testosterone or growth hormone. This often slides into irritability and low energy that can tip dangerously toward violence with nowhere acceptable to go. He traces his own irritability back to those rugby years, blows absorbed repeatedly without any protective helmet at all. It is now understood that repeated impacts to the chest, not only the head, can also contribute to brain injury. The discussion then turns toward mixed martial arts, a sport he admits he is genuinely addicted to watching. He feels real sorrow watching fighters absorb such punishment, even while remaining unable to look away from the cage. He recalls a fight between a close friend and a dominant opponent, his friend nearly pulling off a stunning upset. Because he personally knew that fighter, the bout struck him emotionally, almost like watching his own son in danger. He wonders aloud whether he should feel that same intensity of empathy for every fighter, not just those he knows. He describes watching fighters late in their careers, no longer able to absorb punishment the way they once could. It becomes unmistakable in ordinary everyday conversation. The slurred speech and noticeably slowed reactions that quietly linger afterward. He shares a memory of meeting Muhammad Ali, who by then was already confined permanently to a wheelchair. Even then, Ali remained sharp enough in spirit to be teasing and mischievous with the people surrounding him. A private comment made to an assistant reportedly had the entire room laughing, though he stopped short of repeating it. He promises to share that particular story another time, deliberately leaving the exact comment unspoken for the moment entirely. Even in that diminished physical state, the sharp wit and personality remained unmistakably, vividly present in every gesture. This stands as evidence that physical damage often arrives in the body long before it ever reaches the mind. He connects this to the well-documented link between repeated head blows and trauma-related Parkinson's disease later in life. That tragic condition remains disturbingly common among fighters who spent many long decades absorbing impact across their careers. He closes by recalling his own brush with trauma, a brutal knockout suffered during a street fight around age 20. It was severe enough that he woke afterward in a hospital bed with absolutely no memory of arriving there. Looking back now, he understands how incidents like that explain so much about later struggles with mood and clarity. At the time, neither he nor anyone around him truly understood what was happening inside his own injured brain. Back then, nobody connected a hard hit to the skull with years of irritability and emotional volatility that followed quietly. There was simply no language or framework for it then, only the quiet assumption that a person had changed. In truth, something physical and genuinely measurable had quietly shifted deep inside the structure of the brain itself. He ends with a wry observation that movies consistently get all of this seriously and almost completely wrong. Characters get knocked unconscious or shot, then spring back into action minutes later as though nothing happened at all. There is no trace left of the real disorientation, confusion, or lasting damage that such a blow would actually cause. The real biological cost of such trauma lingers far longer and far more seriously than fiction ever truly admits. It is written instead into scar tissue, shifting hormone levels, and the brain's slow, quiet work of healing itself.